Welcome back to the program. This is Good Afternoon Ghana, and my name is Anya Fompofo. Let's now get into the issues of the economy, and we're starting the week with such, discussions since Ken Ofori-Atta has already met the press and told us what to do, and he's actually urged us not to engage too much negativity on the economy, since that will affect the potential of this economy. So we're looking at Ghana's economy and time for stakeholders to, engage. Are they going to pay heed to the calls that we should actually engage as stakeholders? We'll be dealing with these issues with Professor John Gachi, who is the Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School, and also Daniel Osabote, an economist, on this matter. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll start the talk. Welcome back to the program, Good Afternoon Ghana. Now let's cross over to Ken Ofori-Atta, who has met the press and told us what to do. And some of the things he mentioned in the press conference, we'll hear the news report. The news desk put together this report. Let's have the report, and then we'll come back and start talking.
Ghana last month secured a $3 million external credit facility from the International Monetary Fund aimed at revamping the country's ailing economy. A first tranche of $600 hit Ghana's account in May. The rest of the facility will be received through the 3-year period that the program will run. The Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, on Sunday cautioned that securing the extended credit facility from the International Monetary Fund will not mark the end of the economic challenges facing the country.
Let me state clearly that securing the IMF program is not an end to our current challenges, though it has significantly paved the way for the implementation of an ambitious and well-thought-out program of reform for our economy and country. In fact, the real work of adjustment, realignment, and the return to a path of steady economic growth has just begun. Let us brace ourselves for the needed reforms, especially in expenditure control, non-arrears accumulation, revenue growth, ECG collections, and energy sector reforms in order to rebuild the walls of the Republic with urgency.
While giving an update on Ghana's economy, the finance minister indicated that the IMF-backed program is rather a precursor to the implementation of a program that will bring about the needed economic reforms.
To put it in perspective, about 25% of our assessed debt burden emanates from non-central government operations, mainly from SOEs. Our ability to institute better governance standards of these institutions to address their liabilities and promote their growth will be significantly improved, especially in this period of collective reform. Critically, we must all remain committed to the agreed wide-ranging and strong structural reforms designed to address structural weaknesses and build resilience in key areas, including tax policy and tax administration, expenditure control and arrears clearance, financial stability, financial sector plans, review of statutory funds, governance and corruption, debt management, fiscal credibility, and energy sector and cocoa sector SOE reform.
He also assured that the announced structural and financial reforms expected to help stabilize the economy will not lead to job losses.
Government is very intentional in ensuring that growth and job creation are not sacrificed in the process of restoring macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability. Specific interventions to support the economic recovery process include: 1, improving the business environment, reducing the cost of doing business, and enhancing export competitiveness. In addition, local content legislation will be reviewed to encourage FDI while leveraging the opportunities offered by the Africa Continental Free Trade Area.
Ghana's Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta admonished the media to be circumspect in their reportage on the economy and other national issues in order not to derail the program made so far. Speaking on Newsnight with Winston Tucky, Dr. Patrick Assuming called for a dialogue aimed at revamping Ghana's economy.
Even though it should have happened before so that we get a buy-in from the outset. as it is, we have a program. And, however late it is, I think it's absolutely important that Ghanaians are broadly engaged and we get to understand what the policy options are. And for me, it's absolutely important that the Finance Ministry explains what happens after or in the course of this World Bank program, IMF program, because this program is not what is going to create jobs or make Ghanaian economy more resilient. So I think we need to have that broader discussion so that we all know where we go from here.
Winston, when you start off, congratulations. I know it's going to be a very easy question. It's coming. But thank you very much for that recognition. I think, we have to acknowledge, with regards to the Financial Stability Fund, the expectation really on our side is that we'll be successful with the World Bank by September. For the $250 million, in which we would also have our counterpart financing to support that. We are looking at the legal documentation for the cocoa bills and also the domestic debt, the US dollar denominated one. So my suspicion really is that the SEC needs to clear the documentation and then we'll formally launch it maybe within the next couple of weeks or so. Despite the considerable progress, there remains key outstanding operations, especially in debt restructuring. We are at advanced stages of completing the debt exchange program in relation to the cocoa bills and the US dollar denominated local bonds. We have also rolled out a program to engage independent power producers. Consistent with the MOU signed with organized labor in December 2022 on the exemption of pension funds, they continue to be exempted. Government is currently engaging organized labor and pension fund corporate trustees in line with the MOU to explore mutually beneficial options within debt sustainability limits and to promote macroeconomic stability and economic growth in the spirit of social partnership. We have also successfully worked with the Paris Club and other creditors to determine the parameters of our official debt restructuring under the G20 Common Framework for Debt Treatment. In the coming weeks, we will seek to complete the MOU of the OCC on the terms of bilateral debt treatment. Government will sustain engagement with private creditors, Eurobond investors on external debt to reach agreement with the private creditors in the shortest possible time, and supporting large-scale agriculture and agribusiness interventions through the Development Bank of Ghana. Transitioning to a digital economy to boost productivity, tax collection, and formality. Expanding digital government services and promoting the BOG's digital currency will support digitalization and financial inclusion with adequate safeguards in place, and strengthening policies to support climate change adaptation and mitigation for inclusive growth. As you know, I was in South Korea and South Africa immediately after our IMF approval to drum up private sector engagements in agriculture and technology in particular, in order to pursue a more deliberate and aggressive growth agenda. We'll continue to engage the global community to support our growth program for growth and economic turnaround. We will be launching a Ghana Mutual Prosperity Dialogue agenda to encourage domestic and external investors to be at the core of our growth agenda. We'll be working with Ghanaian businesses and entrepreneurs, think tanks and NGOs, and larger resident multinationals such as the telcos, mining and oil companies to facilitate ease of doing business and promoting business in Ghana. Government is committed to restoring Ghana's economic fortunes within the shortest possible time through a combination of front-loaded fiscal adjustment and structural reforms while creating the conditions for private sector-led growth. Going forward, we will continue to count on the support of all Ghanaians, including the general public, to achieve the objectives set out in the IMF-backed PC PEC. We engage the IMF technical
All right, you're welcome back. That was the presser that was led by or moderated itself by the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, showing or giving us more measures that the government is trying to take. But we also have to come on board. Let me just add this. The caution that came from Ken Ofori-Atta says that Ghana's Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, has admonished the media to be circumspect in their reportage on the economy and other national issues in order not to derail the progress made so far. Now, in his Sunday, June 18, 2023 update on the economy at the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Ofori-Atta raised concerns about some reports in the section of the media which claim that China will be taking over some key resources of Ghana because the country had defaulted on its loans. He said such reports are untrue and unfounded and just a figment of the people's imagination, and that Ghana has successfully worked with the Paris Club and other creditors to determine the parameters of structuring the country's debts, and that at no point will China take over the country's resources. Quote, we have successfully worked with the Paris Club and other creditors to determine the parameters of our official debt restructuring under the G20 Common Framework for Debt treatment. Now, in the coming weeks, we will seek to complete the MOU with the OCC and on the terms of bilateral debt treatment. Government will sustain engagement with private creditors on external debts to reach agreement with the private creditors in the shortest possible time. Quote, in light of the above, we will count on all stakeholders, especially the media, to be circumspect in their reportage on the economy to avoid derailing the progress being made. Our love for the country must supersede all, as the late PAV and SAR University Ghana communications professor said. All right. So let me welcome Daniel Osabote, who's joined me in the studio. He's an economist. You're welcome. It's been a while. Good afternoon to you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So let me start off with the media part where the minister was talking about. And he said that, the report was that Ghana was going to take over, China was going to take over some of our resources because we've defaulted in our loans. Yeah. Then he goes on to say that such reports are untrue and unfounded and just a figment of people's imagination and Ghana's successful work. And Ghana has successfully worked with the Paris Club and other creditors to determine the parameters of restructuring the country's debts, that at no point will China take over the country's resources. Is that to say that should this Paris Club arrangements fail, then whatever reportage was put out by the media will be then true?
Yeah, good afternoon, and let me say good afternoon to all viewers of Metro TV this afternoon, and thanks for having me. Yes, if you look at the Paris Club, one of the reasons why this bailout delayed was the fact that IMF was looking forward to receiving that kind of assurance, finance assurance from the Paris Club, and that really delayed the entire process. Finally, they have agreed to, some of the terms that government is likely to table. Now, though they have given the green light for IMF to come on board with a bailout, the nitty-gritty in terms of the restructuring and whatever, I don't think those things have been settled yet. They are yet to go into detail as to how the restructuring will be taking place. Now, if you look at the reportage from the media, I don't think they have erred in a way, because here we have a situation where you have collateralized the debt with, you are talking about ESLA and other things. So in case you default, then the ultimate is likely to happen. Now, we are not saying that the government has defaulted yet, but what does it mean to collateralize a loan? What it means is that in case I default, you have every right to lay hands on whatever I've used as collateral. But I don't know if per this arrangement that they'll be having with the Chinese government, they'll be waiving this securitization of our assets. If that is what government is doing, then I don't think that the media, in a way, aired.
And let me quote what the media said, maybe various reports that has come. Ghana Web said, China likely to seize Ghana's mineral and electricity revenue over default. Likely. Business Insider Africa says Ghana may lose control of its resources to China if it defaults on its debt. So they're all on condition. The Ghana report said, China could take over Ghana's mineral resources revenue and electricity sales. So the reports or the reportage has really been circumspect in how it's written.
Exactly so. I mean, because if you look at it, if government should default, then what would be the next line of action? Of course, we have used our resources as the collateral, you understand. And if you look at the caption, likely, could, may. So it doesn't mean that automatically China is taking over our resources because we have defaulted. So I don't see any discrepancy between what has already been agreed upon and what was reported by the media.
Now that takes me to the question of the finance minister is still not being straightforward with Ghanaians. Because whatever it is, we have collateralized some of our resources.
Exactly.
And you know, the beginning of the defaulting of your loans, it's just clear danger. It doesn't even need a journalist to tell you that that is what it is. It is what it is, it's black and white. So in terms of how these debts are being restructured, and he said here that we have also successfully worked with Paris Club and other creditors to determine parameters of our official debt restructuring under G20 Common Framework for debt treatment. Now, in these coming weeks, we will seek to complete the MOU with the OCC on the terms of bilateral debt treatment. Government will sustain engagement with private creditors to external debt to reach the agreement. We've already talked about how to collect our ECG, payments, more taxes.
Yes.
We have the pensioners who are also now crying out. In fact, we have signed an MOU with the pensioners to pay them by June 30. I don't know if that's going to happen. They've signed an MOU with the bondholders. It says that the government of Ghana says it will pay all mature coupons of members of the Individual Bondholders Forum, the Individual Bondholders Association of Ghana, on Friday, 30th of June, 2023. The Memorandum of Understanding has been signed to the effect between the Ministry of Finance on the one hand and the Individual Bondholders Forum and the Individual Bond Association of Ghana on the other hand. The signing of the signing took place on May 16. So, well, the points are there. If we get there, we'll probably. So I'm saying that government has just put in little bits and pieces here and there to just secure the joints and hope that the screw don't come off. Because really, I think that once the screw comes off, we will be in a mess. Regardless the 3 billion that's come in.
Let me also say that it is true that they have not yet gone into detailed arrangements with their external creditors. As to the terms that they will be tabling and whether the external creditors will also agree to those terms, I think we need to also look at it. That is where I think the stakeholder engagement will also come into play. Let me also say that fortunately for us as a nation, we went into preemptive default. Okay, ours was not like it was due for payment and we have defaulted, and that really helped us, because if government had not acted for us to get to a stage where we are unable to raise enough revenue to settle those debts, it would have been very bad for this economy. That notwithstanding, I think that we need to really consider some of the things that we'll be discussing with these external creditors, because anything short of they receiving the assurance that we are likely to make good our promise may spell doom for us going forward.
So in terms of the stakeholder, meeting, which stakeholders are we expecting? Because for now, we have stakeholders in Ghana, local stakeholders who are still complaining that the finance ministry is not collaborating with them. So who are we looking at, and what do we consider in this meeting?
I think currently we are looking at the individual bondholders, those who couldn't or who decided not to assess the new bond arrangement. We are talking about pensioners who have their coupons still outstanding, as well as some principals that have to be paid outstanding. And then we are talking about companies, because they also matter. Now, here's the case. We have new taxes. Guta would like to be engaged. Guta would like to at least have that kind of assurance. You see, what is happening is that, yes, we've gone to IMF for a bailout. We have our own conditions that have to be met. But then what will be the mitigating, what are we doing to mitigate the effect? You see, and that is what Guta and other traders will be looking forward to hearing from government. What will be the mitigation for us? Because if you are bringing new taxes and then if you are increasing taxes, whatever, companies are likely to suffer. But what do you have for us? Now, to speak of the financial sector, you're talking about banks. Now, they were assured of a stabilization fund. Okay, is that fund ready? Because 2022, we've been told that because of the domestic debt exchange, 15 out of 23 banks recorded losses. Now, is the fund ready to at least augment the sacrifice that they have also given to government? These are people or these are organizations that have to be engaged, because they are going to be affected directly by this IMF bailout. Yes, so we need to engage all these people. We are talking about engaging academia. We are talking about bringing on board technocrats. This whole discussion should be devoid of political coloration. We should look at it by partisan way of addressing this issue, because there is nothing like a market for one party and another market for a different party. We are all in the same soup. So we need to bring people who matter, irrespective of their political affiliation or whatever. These are stakeholders that government have to engage. And let me also say that, Anne, we shouldn't be too happy, and we shouldn't tout ourselves as we having achieved so much because IMF has come to our aid. No, it shouldn't be so. You understand? Because, one, what is IMF bringing on board? If you look at the number of times that we've been to the IMF, it is more of short-term support, okay? Short-term support. They look more at looking at macroeconomic stability. I mean, thinking that macroeconomic stability will be the panacea for economic growth. But I think we need to go beyond just the macroeconomic stability. Now, what are we doing to add value to labor, moving labor to a certain level where we will begin to produce, where we begin to, come out with policies that will encourage local industry, instead of just encouraging people to come on board. I mean, foreign direct investment, where at the end of the day, they are not ready to plow back profit to expand the economy. They repatriate their profits. Right. You understand? So instead of extending such facilities to the foreign direct investors, why won't you rather channel it into the local side so that at least...
Now, I have said a couple of times that we are at our wit's ends.
Yeah.
And it is the best time, I think, for us to focus within.
Yes.
But we seem to be focusing more externally because maybe we need the money or we need the cash now. We are doing preemptive defaulting.
Yeah.
And so we need to prepare to absorb the shocks.
Yeah.
I guess that's why we are engaging more external investors.
Yes.
But it would have been the best opportunity for us to start from the grounds or, look within and see where we can start from.
Yeah, looking within is the best, because if you look at the reasons that we've been to the IMF for 17 times, I don't think that this time round we are going to IMF, or we've gone to IMF with anything new. If it is not our debts becoming unsustainable, we have high inflation, our CD is seriously depreciating, cost of goods and services going up and all that. So over the years, the 17 times that we've been to IMF, we are not sending anything new. The same reason. Okay, that tells you that IMF shouldn't be the panacea. We should look beyond IMF and tell ourselves that, look, we should be able to break away from this perennial, support that we always seek from IMF, and that is the only way that we can ensure that our economy grows and then we are a bit sustainable. Else, we always run to IMF.
Have me engage Professor Gachi, who is joined us via Zoom. Prof, thank you for your time. Good afternoon to you.
Afternoon.
Great. It's great to have you. I haven't spoken to you in a while, but for what we have done so far, the 3 billion has come in now. We are now, giving information, bits and pieces. Do you think so far we are on the right path? The IMF has told us that the economy is stable for now. People have criticized it, but probably you can understand why they're saying it's stable. But are we, moving on the right path now before I get into other questions?
Well, I think the truth for the matter is that nothing has changed yet. It is expected that IMF engagement will bring down inflation, will bring down interest rate, will bring on board a prudent management, increase in resources in terms of revenue, and engage in proper governance of our country. We have not started those things yet. What has happened is that some 600 million has hit the account of the Bank of Ghana, and that is not what is needed to change the fortunes of the country. Interest rate is still very high as it was. Inflation is still at the range of 42%. So nothing has changed yet. So to claim that 1 month engagement with the IMF program has changed the fortunes of the country is something that we should apply the brake now.
But they didn't really say that it has changed the fortunes. They said it has stabilized. It has stabilized. And I remember speaking with Dilex Finance executive director, what was his name? Joe Jackson. Joe Jackson actually said that, it's better to move from maybe a collapsed economy to, for want of better expression, we are now breathing, sort of. There is a bit of, resuscitating here. So it is not necessarily.
I think it's just too early to be talking in that manner. You see, when you look at the IMF program, it is anchored on inclusive growth. And we know the pillars of inclusive growth. Nothing has happened about that yet. If you can take poverty reduction as part of inclusive growth, nothing has happened about that aspect of our economic life. If you take social theory aspect of inclusive growth, nothing has happened yet. We have not yet started seeing quality education, proper investment in education. We have not seen human development indicators improve yet. So I believe we should hold a break and focus on what we have agreed with the IMF to do. We have agreed that we want to restructure the SOEs. How we are going to do that is not very clear because we know that we have undertaken some reforms, putting in place a body in charge of SOEs. That didn't work. They didn't respect, the pillars set for them to follow. The government itself was interfering by bringing a lot of people to be employed in those sectors, etc. some of the SOEs were actually engaged directly in undertaking some project which should have been undertaken by government. So there's a huge work for us to do. So I think we should just focus on the work and move on.
They're calling for us to do a stakeholder engagement. What do you suggest, on that path? What exactly where are we supposed to start from? The finance minister has indicated that they are going to focus on expenditure cuts. In fact, sitting here, I'm so yet to, know exactly where expenditure has been cut. ECG collections, taxes that we are going to be adding more to, put more pressure and all that. That's going to happen, or I would say it's already happening. Expenditure cuts, I'm not so sure. But when it comes to the, stakeholder engagement, how are we supposed to do it? Who are these stakeholders and what are to be discussed?
I think the best place to direct that question would be the finance minister and his team. I believe people have something to contribute to engagement with the IMF. You never consulted the people, and you finish the process. You pat yourself on the back. Then you want to meet the people just to tell them these are the things I've agreed with the IMF to do. I'm not sure that is encouraging enough. But this kind of stakeholder engagement is you just tell people what the program is about, how some burden will be put on them. Those are the things I can possibly foresee that will be discussed, because you don't need stakeholder engagement before you can ensure the first part of the package. The first part of the package by June, we should see revision in the Bank of Ghana laws reflecting zero lending to the central government. You don't need any stakeholder engagement to do that, because after all, when you are borrowing excessively beyond limits, you didn't even consult the people. Again, the next thing is about reforming the cocoa sector. You don't need stakeholder engagement to reform the cocoa sector. So I'm just wondering what is happening. This is the time to go to work. It is very clear what the package holds for Ghana. We should just go and begin to implement, because it is not the stakeholder who will tell you now that this one is good, this one is bad. So it's just informing the stakeholders for the stakeholder to buy the position of government. And remember, whether you like it or not, the IMF engagement is also political. So we are entering into political season. So you want to assuage the thinking of the people to believe that you have done the best that ever have been done in the management of the economy, for the people to rally behind you.
I'm sorry, can you when you say the IMF engagement is also political, if you can explain it, because the words
economy, of the economy is basically discussed from political point of view. So that is the point I mean. So you want to let the people know that I've gone for the medicine that is the best for the economy. So I'm doing the right thing. So that is the point I'm trying to make.
Wow. What do you have to say to that? Because, the World Bank country director's comments recently was also taken on the political path. You were saying that we shouldn't, politicize things.
Unfortunately,
but is he right to say that, what the IMF is also doing is also political, and they would want to, make the narrative go in their favor? Yeah.
You see, if you look at the plea from the IMF, right, from the beginning of this negotiation, you could see that in a way IMF was siding with government, that the huge debt is not as a result of mismanagement, but then it was as a result of, the pandemic and all that. But we know that this over-ballooned debt didn't happen just within a year or two.
Yes, but the same institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, are all, part of those who have said that the challenges even started before COVID.
Exactly. And that is a problem that sometimes I have with the IMF, because when a sitting government is in power, when you have a government in power, it appears, the government is doing well. Okay, this is not the first time we are hearing from IMF. Anytime a government is in power, oh, the government is doing well, things have stabilized, immediately they leave power and they come out to the truth. And there are countless examples of that, right from Kufuor's time to ex-President Mahama's time and all that. We've been hearing all these things from IMF. Recently, we had a country director of IMF saying that our woes should be put at the doorstep of the NDC government because they went in for energy agreements that we didn't need so much. We are paying so much. And so the question is, after going into that agreement, we have another government that have managed this economy for 6-7 years. So what prevented them from renegotiating on some of this agreement? What prevented them from, making sure that they pay the right rate because we were in crisis then, but some of the agreements were even extended. You understand? So if you don't consider all these things and they come out to blame past government, a government that has left office about 6-7 years, then of course people begin to read political meanings into it. So that is it.
Prof is saying that this stakeholder thingy that's being called for is really not necessary. We know what to do. We know what to do.
I've been saying that as a government, we know what to do. Look, let me tell you.
The government doesn't know what to
do. No, we know what to do.
We know what to do.
Yes, we know what to do.
So he's talking about, revision of the Bank of Ghana. We're talking about reforming of the cocoa sector.
Yes.
If it's about collection of electricity tariffs, didn't we know we have to collect electricity tariffs? What are the measures that we're putting in now that are giving us the success rate of collection of electricity tariffs that we didn't implement that before now?
Good question. You see, Anne, if you look at what is happening, it appears we don't know what to do, but we know what to do. And let me explain. If you look at the trend, anytime we run to IMF for bailout, within the IMF program, and immediately after the IMF program, you see that the economy stabilizes. And let me also say that there is no IMF program that is going to impose any condition on you. You know the problem. You prescribe solution to the problem. So IMF will come in to say that, look, this is what you intend doing. Yes, we've agreed. Based on that, we are going to support you. Then it becomes a condition.
So it takes me to the previous administration.
Yes.
When it was also being criticized, they said, well, we went to the IMF with a technical, we had our homegrown policies.
Yes.
That was a clear evidence that we know what to do.
We know what to do.
You just had your homegrown policies. You presented to the IMF. The IMF just said, instill discipline and implement that.
Yes.
So it means that it's deliberate, that you are just crashing the economy, knowing that what you're doing is wrong. And you need a father or a mother to come and control you and tell you what to do.
You see, the point is, it's like a student who is supposed to submit his assignment, okay? But he wouldn't do it or she wouldn't do it in the absence of the teacher. You understand? Because anytime we go to IMF with all these solutions, they will be on our neck to ensure that we implement each solution. But if we are out of the program, then it's like everything goes with something. I mean, it takes its own course. Now, let me just take you through something. And data supports what I'm saying. Because in the Fourth Republic, we went to IMF in 1995. Then our inflation was 59.46. Our growth, GDP growth was 4.11. 95. By the time we're out of the IMF, our inflation has reduced to 4.87. And then our growth was 4.40. So was it IMF who did this? No. Let's go to 2003, when the IMF program. Then our inflation was 29.77. Our GDP growth was 5.2. By the time we're exiting in 2006, our inflation has reduced from 29.77 to 11.68. And our GDP has also grown from 5.2 to 6.4. Homegrown. Now you go to 2009. Our inflation was 19.25 when we went to IMF. GDP was 4.8. Now by the time we're exiting in July 2012, our inflation has reduced to 11.19. And then growth 9.3. Now go to 2015. It was 17.15 inflation. And then our GDP growth was 2.1. 2019, when we're exiting, inflation has reduced to 7.14. And then GDP growth increased to 6.5. This one, it was based on our own program. You understand? So it clearly shows that anytime we are on IMF program, we tend to stick to what we have planned doing. But anytime we leave the program, we do our own thing. And that is why we keep on going to IMF.
Let me have Prof. Gachi come in to wrap up. Prof, I hope you're still on.
Yes.
Right. So we're wrapping up. You are saying that we should leave the finance ministry, probably the economic management team, to just implement what they know how to implement, or how they know how to implement.
No, I think the point I'm making is that, you see, we have signed an agreement. You are aware, I am aware. So IMF has signed that, expecting that you will be implementing. So this time is implementation period. And you don't need anybody to come and tell us about what they told you. It's in the document we have already, that this is supposed to be done in the cocoa sector, this is supposed to be done to the SOEs, this is supposed to be done in the Bank of Ghana, this is supposed to be done in revenue mobilization, this is supposed to be done for expenditure cut. Why are you going to the people to engage them to do what? If it is not because election is at the corner, are we going to do that? No. Are you now going to tell the people that have done a debt exchange program it was a good program? No. It's just about pick and choose, because it's the finance ministry and the government that proposed debt exchange to the IMF, and the IMF has agreed. So that's why we are having debt exchange program. So what are you going to engage the people with?
So before you go,
so I believe that this is a time to implement, and we all know what is in the document. We have a number of, the president talk about the IMF program. The finance ministry together with IMF had extensive presser at Washington, which was carried live on all radio stations in Ghana. So what is left? We should go back to work.
A quick one before you go. What will you say about the media's reportage on what has happened so far as this IMF deal is concerned, what has come in and what we've done? Do you think we've done a good job, on the back of the warning that came from the finance minister that we should be circumspect in our reportage, not to derail the progress that the program will make?
I think those are just statement out of the difficulties that we are making. If there are information available that the media ought to pass to the public, they will do that, and they have to do that. If the debt exchange program is choking people, the media will have to talk about it. There's no two ways about that. What is relevant is that we have decided to finally go to IMF, and we went. And we have an agreement, and that agreement is supposed to help us. But as we usually do, the timing to claim some better economic outcome of the IMF is too early. We need to go some length of time, engage. In fact, when you implement something, you don't see the results immediately. So why are we trying to force that there is any result? As I articulated to you, the fact that even inflation is 42% does not mean the prices are not high. People cannot buy. So the social aspect of inclusive growth is not being felt. We need to work over a period of time.
Yeah.
The IMF program itself is saying that we'll have debt sustainability in 2028. So why are we trying to tell us that things are now okay? Is it because of a Treasury bill rate? Treasury bill rate is not a rate for the public, it's a rate for the government. The lending rate is a rate for the people and the market. So we shouldn't be using Treasury bill rate to measure any improvement.
Prof. John Gachi, Dean of University of Cape Coast Business School, we're grateful for your time this afternoon. We'll get back to you again when we need that help. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Let me wrap up with you, Mr. Sabutse. So we, at some point in time, we still have to, help government. The media definitely will do its part, as we have to do.
Yeah.
he is suggesting strongly that there's no need for stakeholder meeting, which I think I agree. Why stakeholders meeting? We have the program. They've told us what to do. Do it.
Yeah. At least, you see, with the stakeholder engagement, this time round, it is not for you to elicit any suggestion or recommendation in terms of the IMF program, but for the people or for the organizations to more or less sympathize with you. That not that you are a wicked government, you do have their welfare at heart.
For the stakeholders meeting?
Yeah, that is
then it's not necessary.
Because what new are these people bringing on board?
Exactly. They cannot make changes to the program. You should come and sympathize with it. The program itself is going to even make life more tougher and intensive. I mean, it's going to be a very intensive application of programs.
Yes,
so.
yeah. And I think that they'll also be looking forward to engaging such people and organizations for them to also be assured of the mitigation, that government has for them. Because if you look at the banking sector, they were assured of some fund. Do you have this fund ready? When will government be releasing such funds to the banks to at least also resuscitate them, because they are also suffering? They would like to hear something like that. We are talking about new taxes that have been implemented. What is there that government has for traders to at least also mitigate the suffering? And these are the things that they will also like to hear from government. So when you engage them, then they can also tell you that these are some of the things that when you put in place, it will also reduce the hardship that we are likely to go through. Okay. So on that score, I think it is still important for us to engage such people and also elicit some of the recommendations that they have for government to mitigate some of the sufferings that they are likely to go through. And let me also add that with all these policies or programs that government or whatever reform that government intend implementing, one thing that I'm calling for is quick reinstatement of the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2018. Okay. It is very, very important. You know, this act was suspended in 2020 because of the COVID. Now we are in 2023. We are no more having COVID. But that particular act has still not been reinstated. And so far as we have suspended that act, it gives government the free will to go beyond the 5% threshold to GDP. So we need to quickly reinstate it as one of the ways by which we can discipline ourselves fiscally. We need fiscal discipline.
Right. We'll end it here. Dennis, I would say I'm grateful for your time.
Thanks,
and he's an economist. Join me in the studio. Also, Professor John Kachi, Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School, also joined us via Zoom. My name is Ania Fompofo. We're still going through with the Finance Ministry and the Economic Management team at large as they go through the program of the IMF. So as and when, we definitely will come through with the updates. I'm grateful for joining us in the studio. Stick with Metro TV Entertainment Review is next.